Hello and welcome to the first ever live Hack and Chat podcast. For anyone new watching, as always, we have...
I am Kainoa.
And I'm Jory, and I know we have done it live once before, but I'm not counting it because it was so incredibly awful.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we've done this, our first episode was live, but it was,
Yeah, it was the worst thing we've ever...
We couldn't use any of it, because it was just really choppy and terrible audio.
So this is the pilot. I'm gonna say this, everything else was just like trial episodes.
Wouldn't that make those the pilot, and that this is our inaugural episode?
Alright, this is gonna be the one that's on iTunes, iMusic, whatever.
Oh, okay.
It finally happened. We actually talked about it on the first ever podcast we recorded, and it finally happened. The SNES Mini is out.
Did we talk about that?
Yep. And during that podcast, I said that hands down, if Earthbound was on it, I was going to buy it.
Is Earthbound on it?
Earthbound is one of the flagships for it.
How many have you pre-ordered?
I haven't pre-ordered yet. The first thing I heard about it, or the first time I heard about it, it was immediately sold out.
Which is a problem with Nintendo.
Yeah, I know they do it on purpose, but it's really grinding my gears.
It's so weird, too, because Nintendo's the only company that actually makes money on their hardware.
Yeah.
So, like, if Xbox did it, you'd be like, well, Xbox is losing money on all their hardware sales, so it kind of makes sense that they wouldn't immediately want to make all of these units and then maybe not sell them all. Whereas Nintendo makes money on all of its units, which means that, like, they should want to at least fill basic consumer demand.
Well, they do it for, like, the Wii and the Switch and stuff so that they'll get people to want it more, because it's such a scarce thing.
Yeah.
But for the NES Mini and the SNES Mini, it's really dumb, because they're not going to make enough, like, in total.
Yeah, no, there's always going to be more demand for it than they exist, which I guess is the idea, but I feel like they could balance it better. Like, it feels like the demand is probably, like, what, you think, 100,000 units at least, right?
At least. I think it was more.
More. And they're probably only doing, like, a 50,000 run, a 10,000 run, which is woefully below the line of, like, preparation.
Well, it was kind of a meme with the NES Mini that you couldn't find it anywhere.
Right, it was a meme.
And I know now they're supposedly doubling the amount they were making for the NES for the SNES.
That's not...
But I don't know if that's enough.
That's not going to be enough. I don't think there's any argument that that's going to be enough.
So, have you heard much about the SNES Mini?
No.
So, it's $80, which is about $30 more than the NES Mini was. Okay. And it's only 21 games.
Honestly, I think that might be fine because people like to nostalgia trip over a lot of those old consoles, but I feel like for the majority of consoles, especially older ones, there's probably only like 20 good games.
As someone who the SNES is my favorite console of all time, I would so disagree with that. There are lists online right now of like the top 10 games that they didn't put in the SNES Mini.
I guess.
And I get why they did it. It was like, it's got to be hard to do licensing. I imagine that's the hardest part of that.
That is one thing I did hear, is that licensing was a nightmare because so many of the, like, really good SNES games are just, like, they're in this weird place where the company that made them doesn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. Some other, like, shell company owns the rights and is, like, empty, basically. Like, it's a skeleton crew running it. They can't get in contact with anyone, so the IPs are just basically dead. And so they can't find even the people they would call to ask if they could put it on the SNES Mini.
Well, some of the games that people remember the most are, like, so far away from Nintendo. Like, there's a lot of movie or TV-based titles. Like Batman's and, like, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game that everyone rages over. Actually played it. Understandable why people rage over it. That game is a piece of shit. But they've been actually, like, for their Virtual Console, there's a lot of games that have been on Virtual Console that they aren't porting over.
Yeah, I can't think why they wouldn't. Maybe because they want to bump Virtual Console sales?
Probably.
Well, I guess they have to make more money through Virtual Console because it costs them literally nothing to put that out.
Yeah.
Aside from, like, basic development to get it running on the new machine, but once...
That's almost nothing. Did you know that
I know
they
it's an
use
emulator.
emulators?
I am aware that it's an emulator. But because it's Nintendo,
Uh-huh.
I want to trust that their basic QA is, okay, yeah, it's on an emulator and it should run fine, but just run through the game and make sure there's not, like, some weird bug somewhere. Just because emulation isn't accurate at all. Do I need to
I have a theory, and I actually want to test it when the SNES Mini comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Earthbound actually has an issue with emulators.
Right.
They have an anti-piracy measure where if they test that you're using more memory than should be available to the console, it will make the game incredibly difficult, and you actually can't finish it. When you get to the final boss, it black screens and just quits out your game and deletes your data, which is
great,
hilarious.
Which I hope they fixed on the emulator console.
I'm willing to bet that they didn't.
Really?
Yeah.
That it's just gonna be this broken, buggy piece of shit.
Well, the game perfectly works, except there's, like, way more enemies, and then you can't beat it.
I feel like they, at the very least, would fix the fact that you can't beat it, right? Like, they would have to, because you can't release, especially if they want to make it a flagship title, they can't be like, oops, our flagship title is uncompletable.
Yeah.
I
don't know how much quality assurance they did for this, though.
But it's Nintendo. They're, like, so forward-facing. Well, not forward-facing.
Hey!
Yeah. They're so concerned with their image that they do a lot of QA. Like, what comes out of Nintendo that isn't at least polished, if a turd?
That's fair. Their stuff does tend to be very, very good when it comes out.
So I'm not worried that there'll be QA issues. What I think might happen is that, like, there could be some anti-consumer stuff. Like, it could be really expensive for additional controllers, if that's even an option. And it could be really incredibly DRM heavy to the point where, like, people just want to gut the console and put in a Raspberry Pi or something because it's not worth.
Speaking of which,
yeah,
I am so annoyed with their pricing. $80 for this thing.
Yeah.
Like, I was expecting 50, maybe 60 because it was the next generation of console. But $80 whole. So last night I went on a little Amazon spree.
Are you trying to buy all the games that would be on it?
No, but I went through and priced out how much it would be to make this out of a Raspberry Pi. And so it's $12 for a standard SNES USB controller, which I picked out the good one. There have been a lot of reviews talking about how the buttons aren't very tactile in some of the knockoff ones. I looked into it. I picked the one that's the most like the actual SNES controller. Raspberry Pi with the NES plastic casing is $20. A power cord is $5 and $6 for an SD card that can hold every single game that ever came out on the SNES. That is over 200 games. Yeah. I know because I have these. That's almost half of the price.
Yeah. Well, one, if say that for some event like Christmas, you shipped me all of these parts. They would get to my house and I would stare at them blankly and put them in the closet. Because I do not know the first thing about how a Raspberry Pi works. I could figure it out. I wouldn't bother. So, you could make the argument that yes, for that price, you could build your own thing. But I feel like this SNES Mini is kind of like the Alienware of consoles. It's something that's overpriced, but you're paying for the luxury of not having to care.
If it weren't for the massive lawsuit that I would get from Nintendo, I would start selling these just immediately for profit.
Yeah.
Because it's actually super easy to set up. It's about as easy as once you have your computer together and you just need to put the software in. There's like no plugging pieces together, no crazy weird installing Gentoo shit. It's
really, because that's how I imagine it would be, even if it's just putting an emulator shell on the Raspberry Pi.
Because of the people who develop it want like a lot of people to be able to have this access. The installers and stuff, if you're just doing that, if you're not programming it yourself, incredibly easy. There is one thing that the SNES Mini has that this wouldn't have. Star Fox 2. An unreleased Star Fox game for the SNES that never came out because the Nintendo 64 came out before it was released. is coming out 15 years late for the SNES Mini.
It's gonna be Duke Nukem forever. It's gonna suck and everyone's gonna hate it.
Supposedly, it just plays like the first Star Fox with new levels, which is fine.
Some people want that.
Yeah, I didn't like the original Star Fox very much.
Yeah, we play Pokemon every couple of years. It's not that far of a stretch to say, let's play Star Fox again, given that game had, 3 games over the course of its lifetime?
It
4?
had a lot. They were just kind of ignored. Like, it had a ton of DS games. And
Did
3DS games.
I was not aware.
And then, a Wii U game, and... Yeah.
Okay, kind of off topic. You know, it's a really obscure and kind of fun DS game.
What?
Spectrobes.
I love that game. That's the one where you have
fun.
to, get the fossils,
right? You get the fossils and you revive them, and it came with QR cards, so you could, plug shit into your... it came with a pack of, trading cards with holes in them, and if you overlaid it on the DS screen, you could tap the holes, and it would give you the thing in-game.
That is one of those games that I remember from my childhood that I'm always trying to chase the dragon with.
Yeah.
Nothing makes me feel how, that game made me feel back then.
You know,
it doesn't hold up.
That game's licensed by Disney.
Really?
Disney owns the license to that, yeah.
Huh.
So strange. But... fairly good games. Yeah, they don't hold up super well, but I think they're solid.
I went back and played some about a year ago.
I did as well.
And the story is awful. The battling's way too simplistic. There are parts of it
The battling in the second one is entirely different.
Is it?
It's, entirely different. Because when I went back to it, I was like, I'll just play the sequel, because I think I picked it up in GameStop for $5.
Right.
And I was playing through the sequel, and I was like, the combat in this is, way different from what I remember.
That might be what it needs to stay alive, then.
Yeah, I felt
it's already dead,
It's super dead. I felt like the combat wasn't really the draw of that game. It was basically like a monster collecting simulator.
Mm.
For me, at least, it was just I'm gonna get all the cool-looking monsters. Because it has that, Pokemon before the internet feel, where you're just I have literally no idea what the next area is gonna look like, what kind of weird fucking monsters are gonna be there. Whereas nowadays, before the Pokemon game even comes out,
right,
you know a lot of the Pokemon that are gonna be in it.
Yo, yeah.
And I don't know. Those, off-brand Pokemon clones have, this weird charm in that it's, so obscure that you're, you do actually get that sense of discovery.
Give some of the Shin Megami Tenseis a try. Not Persona, because I know you've played some Persona.
Aware. I have played some of the Shin Megami Tenseis. The monsters were just such a different style in that. Because they're more like the Personas from Persona.
Well, they're all based on pop culture.
And it reminds me more of, Dragon Quest Monsters, which I think is similar to that in that the monsters are a little more... I don't know... I can't even think. The monsters are just very differently designed. In Pokemon, they're designed to be these little... either cutesy or, sort of terrifying creatures. Whereas in Shin Megami Tensei and Dragon Quest Monsters, it feels like they're so willing to just be it's just a carnivorous plant, or it's just a satyr, or it's just shit from mythology and pop culture. And
I really like that. I felt like it was Pokemon grown up, and there are those other monsters that don't feel like I get where you're coming from, where it is just it might be an animal or something.
Yeah.
But I never, once you understand the lore a little bit, it feels a little more magical. Because it's, at least in Shin Megami Tensei Online, imagine, which I will never get old of saying.
Yeah.
All of the monsters from there come when they developed teleportation.
Mm-hmm.
But something happened and they actually started teleporting things from people's minds. So the most popular things in the world are the things most people were thinking about. Yeah. So,
I now understand the tie-in between that series and the Persona series.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't get that for a long time. Now I get it.
And that's why you see things like Jack Frost, who's supposed to be like a soda mascot in that game. And that's why you also see fucking God in some of the games.
Really?
Yeah, they actually had a big issue porting the game to America for the original game because they called God Yahweh.
Huh.
And you actually have to kill God. Which I thought was really neat. Although the original games for that are so clunky.
I mean...
you can say that about any original game, really.
Yeah, if you go back to any older game, you're just like, this is terrible. Like, think of some of the early Zelda inventories.
I love that game so much.
Not Zelda 1. Zelda 1's janky, but they did their best. Like, later ones. Like, specifically, I think it's the Oracle games. When you open your menu, the way that you cycle through the menu is like select or something. Where it's such a weird button that you don't even realize when you first start playing there's other sections of the menu, because you would never even think. I think like an NPC has to tell you, like, do you know if you open your menu and press like these 3 buttons, it'll switch to another menu screen? You're like, no, I didn't know that.
You know what menu
Thanks for
from
telling
Zelda
me how to save.
really makes me feel like nauseous? Ocarina of Time. I hate the cubic menu. I never remember where I am. I never remember how to get from place to place. And the fact that like 75% of all of the information is just obscured from me makes me sick.
Supposedly they patched that up a little bit in the 3DS version. And I know that I find Majora's Mask's inventory just better organized in general, even though it's the same basic inventory.
Yeah.
And I think that's because they had to dedicate an entire screen to the masks. And so they had to kind of jimmy things to make them fit a little better.
I have the same issue in Breath of the Wild. And that's the one issue that stuck with me throughout playing the entire game, is that I can never remember what buttons I hit to switch between the menus. Because
I've seen a lot of people have that issue with that game. And it ties into my basic issue with that game. I think the controls are garbage.
Okay, so I was thinking about it. You had a lot of issues switching between A and B in that game, even though that's the control scheme every Nintendo console has used. I think, at least with that, it was just mostly because you were used to playing on an Xbox controller.
Yeah, and that's entirely possible, but like you were saying, like, I was at the point in that game, like, immediately where I was like, I give up on trying to, like, do the quick menuing, because I will always hit the wrong button.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I'll just open my menu every time. But because the weapons break so fast, you're constantly opening your menu, and it feels, like, Borderlands-y in the, like, okay, I've got to stop the action every 3 minutes to go do some menuing. Which didn't bother me as much in Borderlands, but I think it's because that had more going on with that menuing, as opposed to Breath of the Wild, where it's just like, this is not a shitty weapon, so I will pick it up.
With Breath of the Wild, I had a similar issue at first, where I couldn't figure out how to use the quick menus. And I actually at first was using my other hand. But just because I always played the controllers apart, and so I just used my other thumb to press the button while I still had my moving stuff going on. After a while, I got used to just having to find a safe space in combat and then change weapons. And I think that added a little bit of strategy for me. And then, I don't know when it clicked or how it clicked, but it just immediately clicked.
Yeah.
And then I understood it, and then combat was a lot more fun. I will say that you never got to the point where combat was fun in that game.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a spoiler, but right after you jump off the cliff, you get a quest marker, and that basically immediately teaches you the combat, or at least the fun stuff about the combat. There's really fun dodging, and then trying to get out of the way fast enough to get a flurry of blows, and there's a lot of stuff going on that they don't teach you immediately,
which is the exact opposite of what most previous Zelda games did with their tutorials, because in Wind Waker they front load all of your sword information. Like, they make you sit there and do every sword technique to the point where there's a section of that tutorial where they teach you attack rolling and how it can knock stuff down, but that's an optional part of that tutorial. And later in the game, it calls back to that, and you have to roll into an object to cause a bunch of stuff to fall over. The first time I played through Wind Waker, it took me 12 hours to figure out I had to roll into that thing. Because I didn't have the internet the first time I played through. And it was literally me just, like, running around, like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And eventually I accidentally rolled into the thing, and I was like, oh shit, when was that ever explained that was a mechanic? And the answer is, if you do a lot of searching on the opening island, you can, like, stumble across a tutorial for that. And
gotcha.
That, I think, it's good that they're thinking more about, like, we should maybe not front load our tutorial if we don't have to, because people will forget.
Well, I really like the way Breath of the Wild did it for a couple of reasons. That first area, when you don't really know how to dodge or do stuff, it gets you used to using your shield more, which it has to be an active action, which... Yeah. I mean, some of the older Zeldas did that. But it also gets you using your Sheikah Slate in combat, which I don't think you really did much of. But there's a large part of that game where I just played using the bomb exclusively for combat.
I messed around with using the bomb a little bit too. I kept blowing myself up because I kept hitting the wrong button.
You kept hitting the drop button because you didn't know the bumper was there.
No, I eventually figured out that the bumper was there, but it wasn't intuitive to me to press the bumper, because in previous Zelda games it was the A button to throw. The way that previous Zelda games did it was, if you're moving, you throw it. If you're standing still, you drop it, which I preferred because it meant that, like, in combat, since you're moving around, you tend to throw it.
I really like having that extra option, because there's a lot of times in Breath of the Wild I found where dropping it was necessary while I was running away.
Yeah, you can sort of do that, and this gets into weird kind of gamey stuff, but in Twilight Princess, it has the same setup where you throw it if you're running and you drop it if you're standing still, but there's, like, kind of a wind-up on moving and stopping in that game if you're moving at full speed, just to make it feel a little more natural. So what you can do is, if you're walking and you want to drop a bomb, if you release the stick to neutral and press the button, and then press forward on the stick again, you'll drop the bomb, but you won't actually lose any movement.
Weird.
And that hardly ever comes up, honestly.
It comes up a lot in
Breath of the Wild is more... It's weird, because previous Zelda games were combat-focused, but Breath of the Wild feels like it's more concerned with improving that combat experience.
Yeah.
Whereas previous Zelda games just were like, you get a new item, and that kind of improves your combat experience. Breath of the Wild wanted to go into it with a good combat system, and then improve upon it with your various abilities.
And it makes it a lot better with a lot of the mini-bosses there are. These are entirely optional, which I think was my biggest gripe with the game. But the best mini-bosses have these crazy little things you have to do. Because it's Zelda. You always have to do something weird.
It's some weird shit.
But there's actually a sect of mini-bosses that you have to Shadow of the Colossus up. Which I thought was a lot of fun.
Did you play... God, what was that one even called? Did you play Phantom Hourglass?
Yeah, I didn't like it.
How far did you get in Phantom Hourglass?
Couple islands.
Did you get...
I got to the ghost ship, and then my game crashed.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
I never had any crashes
right?
in a Nintendo game, even, actually.
Yeah.
But there's a late game boss in that's a giant, like, stone golem. Like, it's kind of like an Egyptian-themed dungeon. It's in, like, a big pyramid. And you fight the boss in a minecart. It's really interesting. The boss, it's not on the 3DS, it's on the DS, but the way that they have the arena set up is the top and the bottom screens are this 3D view of this huge giant golem, and you're in this room, and you jump in a minecart, and the minecart goes around the room, and it spins you around the boss. It's a really cool boss fight in a game that is probably not good enough to warrant having a cool boss fight like that.
Download it, save states, make someone else play through the beginning of it.
It's definitely, like, that boss fight is probably one of my favorite Zelda boss fights. And ultimately, it's the like 3 cycle, like,
right,
do a thing 3 times and you win. But it's just such a cool way to present itself, I think.
So moving on from Nintendo, I noticed you had played some Skyrim recently.
A lot of Skyrim recently.
Are you following the Beyond Skyrim mod?
I'm not following it actively because it's not going to be done for like a decade.
Oh yeah.
So I don't particularly care. I'm more following what is it, Skywind?
Yeah.
I'm more following that, but even that's not going to be done for probably another 3 or 4 years, so.
Yeah. Well, Beyond Skyrim just released the Golden Coast, which I'm super excited about. You know, that's my favorite part of all of Cyrodiil.
Yeah, we're in Anvil and stuff.
It looks so beautiful. I'd say that's the most beautiful part
Wait,
of Oblivion.
Why?
They just
How much of it is done then? Do they have Colovia and like Bruma done?
I think this is their first part that's done.
Why that part? Okay.
Maybe they just liked it. It was probably the easiest for assets.
But it's just geographically,
yeah,
it's weird to not be like, well, we'll just do Colovia because we have all the assets for Colovia because it's basically Skyrim.
Well, I think the big draw for Beyond Oblivion is not having to be in Skyrim anymore. So why make the first map you do basically Skyrim? Because all of North Cyrodiil is just...
Honestly, the big draw of, like, big new world spaces like that is just new content. Like, I don't care that it's a different looking thing.
Yeah.
I care that it's new content. That's the big thing for me.
I just hate looking at Skyrim. I've had this conversation with you about a million times, and, you know.
You hate looking at Skyrim?
Yeah. It's just, like, the landscapes are ugly. Like, it's got nice shaders, it's got some nice plants in there. If you look closely enough at anything, it's gonna be pretty. But from, like, a big picture, if you zoom out, if you look at the map, it's a white blob with peaks.
I don't know that that's true. I find Skyrim to be a very visually interesting game, and I feel like, especially in the places where they made an effort to make it really dynamic and visually appealing, they really succeeded. And I don't know, I find it even strange that you find it ugly.
Yeah, I don't know, it's just, I hate looking at snow forever.
And there's so much of that map that isn't snowy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you know what Clockwork Empires is?
Clockwork Empires is... Are we off Skyrim?
Yeah.
Okay. Clockwork Empires. Is that that's made by the people who made TikTok Isle?
No. It's
no?
made by the guys who made Dungeons of Dreadmore, that rogue game.
Yes. It's a steampunk, like, city builder, empire builder thing.
Yeah, with a fair amount of choose your own adventure.
I followed the dev blog of that years ago before it came out, and then when it finally came out, it looked really disappointing, and I never got it.
Well, it was early access, and the graphics of that game were very ugly, I'd say. Which, I don't know, maybe
to be
it doesn't
fair,
matter.
Dungeons of Dreadmore was not exactly
it had a cohesive art style, I think. It did. The guys who were making Clockwork Empires just split up. Halfway through making their early access game.
Yeah.
Everyone's super angry. Of course, they should be. If you stop making an early access game halfway through...
Before it's done, after everybody bought it.
Everyone has the right to be angry at you.
But that's sort of a risk you take when you buy into early access. I feel like... Here's your next big April Fools. Here's the next big April Fools that somebody needs to organize and do. Get every single high-profile early access game you can to, on April Fool's Day, announce that they're splitting up and will never finish the game. Because it would remind the consumers, oh shit, none of these games exist yet, and they could disappear in an instant. Oh no.
Mm-hmm.
It would, I think, be good for maybe not consumer like trust, but definitely for the consumer to be reminded that shit isn't necessarily gonna always work out.
Yeah. Well, I looked into this a little bit because I wanted to see what the big hubbub was about. I don't really understand like why people want this game. I like looked into it a lot, but there's a niche for everything, so it's fine.
Yeah.
But one thing I found that was super annoying, it's on sale. It is 50% off for the summer sale, and the summer sale started after they had broken up.
Yeah.
It still says it's in early access. The reviews are just going down the shitter, but I don't think that's enough.
Yeah, it's probably not enough. So, okay, here's the question. Do you think that early access titles that have been abandoned should be excluded from sales?
No. I think they should be free to play. If the developer is saying we have given up, we are not making money on this anymore, do not let them have the money. Do not let them, like, it's still, if they have their right to take it off Steam if they want, but there should be something in the agreement that says if you are done developing this, it's still in early access, it's an unfinished game, and your entire team is gone, you do not get the right to sell this anymore, but you can still give it out.
The problem with that I see is a situation where companies are like, okay, we're gonna split, but because of our agreement, we're gonna create a shell company, and we are going to employ one developer, and we're going to insist that we're continuing to work on it for as long as people will buy our story.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it would end up with this situation where every couple months it's like, remember that game that hasn't gotten an update for a while? Yeah, they were stealing our money for a couple months. And it's like, I feel like a rule like that almost encourages...
Or at the very least, they'd like just push it to finished game, which I think might be a better solution. I think also, if you're done developing it,
it's a finished game.
Yeah, you take it. You have to take it out of early access.
Maybe that's actually... I feel like that's the better solution. Just say, yeah, if you're done developing it, it's finished. Whether it's good or not is like entirely not a consideration. If you're done developing it, it's finished.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, I think, would be a better solution. And then maybe people wouldn't be as... I think I disagree with you a little bit. I don't think that the people necessarily have a right to be super angry. Because when you buy into early access, it's almost like kickstarting. You shouldn't be angry if it doesn't come through, because that was the risk you took when you bought in the first place. And so... I don't necessarily think that... I definitely think that developers who abandon games should be punished, but I don't think that the people should be in charge of, like, raising a mob about it.
Yeah, it's just a shitty situation.
It is.
All around.
And that dev studio has, like, done quite a bit beforehand. Like, Dungeons of Dreadmore isn't a bad game. So it's surprising that they would just randomly split. Was it straight up just that they were not making enough money?
I'm not sure. I've heard rumors that it was just they didn't want to be developing anymore together. Like, they wanted to just move on to new projects.
That's not really your choice to make as a professional, though. If you as a professional commit to a project, it shouldn't be like, I don't feel like it anymore. Especially once you've, like, tried to get people to buy into it.
I agree that there should be some personal responsibility if you're making people pay, but
I feel like there should be contractual... Where were these people's contracts that said, like...
Well, they all split up at the same time.
So it's possible that all their contracts were up and they're like, we're not re-signing.
Dissolved. And I get it. They're all artists, like, at their core, and there's that artist need to just do something new.
Yeah, there is, but...
And also, like... there is a very good chance that they just found that this game wasn't working, and it wasn't what they wanted it to be, and there was no chance of that. So sometimes you just have to give up.
Well, you know what? I'm glad that I stopped following their devlog. I'm glad that years ago I was like, I don't care about that game anymore. And honestly, that game has been in development for many years.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's been in development for 5+ years.
Oh.
I started following that dev blog when we were in high school.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so it's not a spring chicken anymore. Also, does Steam have a rule, like, things should have, like, benchmarks for getting out of early access yet?
I don't think so.
That
Hopefully
needs
that'll
to
be their next thing.
Because if there are so many things that are like, we're in early access, and it's like, when are you coming out of early access? Well, we don't know. And okay, fair enough. You don't know what time you're going to have everything ready for early access. But a lot of these developers, you could be like, well, what do you want to have implemented in the game by the time you come out of early access? Well, our vision is a growing one. And no, what is going to be in the game when it is finished?
Well, I think there needs to be, and I don't know how the hell they would implement this, but some sort of discrepancy between games that are already finished and games that are not already finished. Like the kind that...
Active development versus early access?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, like, Slime Rancher came out, and it's not the biggest game in the world, but it's a few hours of content, and it's got everything it needs to be a full game.
That game right now is actually... I just went back and played it because it came out. I had played it a couple months ago again because I've been playing it steadily through its development cycle.
Right.
And honestly, that game... I almost want to say it did early access well.
Yeah.
Because it came in with this goal that wasn't super lofty. It was just like, I'm going to implement a bunch of differently colored orbs that bounce around in unique ways, and you are going to farm the orbs for smaller geometry pieces, and you're going to get money repeat. And it was like, that's not ambitious from a development standpoint, but it was well polished when it came out, and the amount of content that it is in it for its price, I think, is reasonable. Especially with, like, how delightful I think that art style is.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Especially some of the new slimes. Like, the old slimes, some of them were kind of boring, like pink slime. It's like, it's a pink slime. You know what it looks like.
I hated the water slimes.
The puddle ones?
Yeah.
The puddle slimes? Yeah. Those are really hard to farm.
Yeah.
But, like, some of the new ones, they have a quantum slime now, which has this amazing effect on it. Basically, the way
Is that the green glowing one?
No, that's a rad slime,
Okay.
which is kind of cool looking, but was one of the older ones. Quantum slimes have this thing where whenever there's a quantum slime in the area, there's also a negative quantum slime, and they flicker between the two.
That's cool.
Physically. But the flicker effect is really cool. It's like an old, like, flickering cathode ray monitor sort of look. That just comes across really well. And they even made, like, a fruit. It's like a quantum lemon that you can feed them.
That's cool.
That has the same effect on it. And there's one, I think it's a whirlwind slime from, like, the late game area you can go to once you, like, unlock a bunch of shit. And it's just, like, the most beautiful looking, like, deep blue, purple, like, nebulous thing. And honestly, it's one of the prettiest looking things I've seen in a game. Like, specifically, just the shaders and texturing on this slime is fucking fantastic for, like, a weird indie rancher sim.
I need to play again. Because the last time I played was before Rad Slimes were out. And you could only see one, like, briefly in the menu screen.
Yeah. Yeah, you haven't played in a long time then.
No.
There's a huge amount of more content. There's, like, new worlds and shit. There's an endgame area that you can go to where it's a desert. And the end game of the game is that using plorts, which are basically the shit of the slimes that you collect for money, you take them out to the desert, and you can put them in these old shrines, and you slowly turn the desert into an oasis. And that's the end game of that game.
That's cool.
It's really cool. I haven't actually fed any of the oases yet, because I got out there, and I found that the area is a little too big. Like, I feel like they wanted to get that, like, vastness of a desert sense, but I feel like they sort of failed in that sense, because really what they ended up with was a lot of empty space, unfortunately. But there's also, like, meteor storms and shit in the desert. It's, like, hostile as shit.
That's cool. That game needed more of that, because the enemies in that game are kind of useless.
Tar? I don't even think enemies are, like, a consideration. I think the tar literally exists. And in fact, I don't think. The tar exist so that you cannot put all of your slimes in one coop.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
if they interact, basically the way that the system works is, you have all of these base slimes, and you can feed a slime the plort of another slime to, like, merge them and, like, breed them into, like, a bigger one that's got properties of both. But if then that one eats another plort that isn't like either of the two it already is, it becomes a tar, which is like this oily, rainbow-looking thing that eats slimes.
They're just so fun to throw off cliffs, though.
Oh god, one of the best things you can do in that game is you just go out into the starting area. There's always like 30 pink slimes. You vacuum them all up. You walk over to the ocean. You just fire them in, and they're just like, whee!
I feel so bad doing that to the regular slimes, though. Like, it has to be the tar. Do you actually use water for the tar? Because I've never used water for... I mean, I used it once, and it's so boring to me that I just prefer throwing them off.
It's so much more fun to throw them. Honestly, the water exists for managing puddle plorts.
Yeah.
And for the late game, honestly. That's, like, the only reason water exists.
Okay.
Yeah, that game is really cool. And, well, you didn't even play since Rads. There's a lot of normal slimes that are very dangerous.
Oh, okay.
That are in the game now.
Because before it was mostly just the fire slime and the rock slime.
The boom slime?
Those were there too.
Yeah, the boom slime is the fire one you're thinking of. And then there's the rock slime, which rolls at you. Then there's like an upgrade to the rock slime, which is the crystal slime. Mm-hmm. And they also roll at you, but when they hit you, they send you flying. And which can like knock you off shit and give you I don't think there's fall damage in that game.
No. I think you have to get an upgrade for to mean no fall damage.
I don't remember. But either way, they send you flying, which can fuck you up really hard. And also, whenever they move, they leave an environmental hazard on the ground. Mm-hmm. So like if there's a bunch of them, like for example in a corral, you cannot walk inside a corral with even like 5 of these things. Because they'll just insta-gib you. Like, you'll walk in, they'll all immediately turn towards you and roll at you. You'll launch into the air and land on their environmental hazard and just immediately die. And you're like, holy shit, those things are terrifying.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
Another try. It's been way too long.
It's definitely worth playing.
So I want to actually go back. Last podcast, I ended up saying a lot of things that I recently found out are completely wrong.
Oh, so I'm sure that's going to happen now.
I want to go through at least a couple of what I wrote down and just fix up some misconceptions I made.
Yep.
First, Elite Dangerous is actually now a season pass in the main game. You no longer have to continually buy things. It's just one season pass in the main game and you're good.
That's good.
Which I still think maybe they should have just made the season pass the main game. Just because of how necessary it is to play it now?
Yeah, but fair enough. Like, I was telling you yesterday, my last purchase for the Steam Summer Sale was all of the Fallout 4 DLC.
Right.
Because I felt like I couldn't play that game without the DLC anymore because all the mods are updated for DLC. I feel like if DLC is required to play the game, then kind of... Not fair enough, if it's required. But Elite Dangerous is a fun game without the DLC. The DLC makes it kind of expands on that, and it makes the game more fun. So I feel like if they want to charge that money, at least now they're not doing it in a super scummy way.
I want to disagree with you, actually, a little here. I've played since the DLCs came out, and you cannot do combat without the DLC. You basically insta-die if you do not have the DLC. It creates upgradable weapons, which all of the NPC ships will have, and every other ship will have. And same with armors, and you can basically just upgrade your ship a whole lot through this weird crafting system they add. And so it's basically pay to win.
Yeah. Okay, if that
It's
mechanic
like,
exists, then
imagine
that is a
playing
problem.
Fallout and then Nuka World came out, and then all of the enemies had MIRVs. And we're just
Yeah.
constantly shooting nukes at you.
Even if you didn't have the DLC and you're like, why is this happening? This isn't fair.
Yeah, it's...
Yeah, no. Okay, I understand your complaint now. That is a problem. Does it still show up in single player?
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Right? It's annoying.
So I basically couldn't play the game right now if I
can-
wanted to.
If you're really good at evading things,
Uh-huh.
you can. But that game's all about just pulling ships out of whatever they're doing to fight them.
I mean, that's one... I
Yeah.
played it as a trader sim.
Same.
Yeah.
But like, you're gonna get pulled out. Especially as a trader, they're gonna like scan you and immediately pull you out of hyperdrive.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're kind of fucked. Because
Yeah.
you can't defend.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to the next thing I got wrong. And this is actually going to break my heart saying it out loud. But Vive knuckles are not actually gloves. We just got our first video showing off what they are actually supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And they're super disappointing.
Oh.
Have you seen the Oculus controllers?
Not recently.
They wrap around your hand, and you hold like a bar.
Oh, yeah.
And they're supposed to be the better controllers for using VR.
Really?
Just because they feel more like you're doing stuff with your hands. But, like, the new Knuckles are that. They are almost identical in design. They add a couple of new features in that they can sense when your fingers are on them. And in the
So you do get, like, finger-for-finger grip?
Yes, except you always have to keep at least one finger on the thing so that you can hold it. Because it's still a bar that you have to hold.
But is it not strapped to your hand?
No.
Could you not strap it to your hand?
You could, but I'm assuming they're not, like, going to make games for aftermarket modifications.
Right, but, like... God, that's such a stupid design choice. Why would you not just put a strap... How much does a strap cost? My dad bought a watch for $7 the other day because he wanted the inner parts and he gave me the strap. Like, straps are $3 on a what, $90 piece of hardware?
Probably.
$70 piece of hardware?
Yeah.
So, fucking put a strap on it. Okay, don't give me a strap. Give me the little, like, thing on the end that's, like, on phones so that I can put a fucking strap on it myself.
Make it a glove. Make it the same controller with a glove you put your hand in.
I feel like, okay, and this is gonna be, like, more, like, utilitarian side of this. Maybe gloves aren't a good controller design decision, because it's like, switch off with me. Here, put on my sweaty glove.
Well, it's already that way with the headset. Everyone who has one says that if you trade it to someone, it will be sopping wet.
Yeah, I mean, that is an issue.
Achievement Hunter bitches about it all the time, because they have a show now where it's just, like, 3 of them going through VR stuff.
And they're just like,
because you're doing, like, manual, like, stuff.
Yeah, you're fucking around.
And it's a sponge, so it blocks light.
Right.
So it has to, like, soak up every little thing.
Yeah, that is a problem. But I feel like maybe not a glove. That's why I think a strap would be good. Or even if you wanted to do it, make them fingerless.
Yeah.
Just make them like Ash Ketchum gloves, where they go down to like the edge of your wrist, and they don't even go up any of your fingers. They're just like a weird hand sock.
Yeah, I don't know.
Fingerless hand sock.
I'm just super disappointed because they did a little demo where they showed off like how it works, and they're like trying to show off how you can actually use your fingers.
And it's like not working for him.
It's working for him, but he's trying to show off how you use your fingers to do stuff, and he's like, I can do finger guns, and he just takes his index finger off of the controller. And then he's like, I can do metal hands, where he takes his pinky off. But, like, you can't do open hand, close hand, which is what you want to be doing with your hands.
Yeah.
Picking things up.
Yeah. Well, that just means you end up in a situation where everybody is a 3-fingered alien in the simulation. So they have the one finger down, and you just have the other 3 to work with.
Oh my god, those fingers are gonna get so cramped, though.
Oh, especially your pinky. Your pinky is not designed to be like an individual motorized thing, but you could never also hold a thing with it.
Oh, I was thinking middle finger and index finger and thumb.
Oh.
Like, because that's how you always see three-fingered aliens.
Well, I was thinking 3 fingers and a thumb. So I was thinking you put down your ring finger, because that's a fairly strong finger that you don't use much, so you could hold the thing with it.
That is way more comfortable to just have your pinky down.
It is way more comfortable to have your pinky down, now that you say. But yeah, there you go. Oh, okay. Pitch for game for VR with this thing. Remake Humans Must Die.
Yes.
Where you play the alien and you have 3 fingers because you're holding the controller.
Oh, I love that game so much.
It's a great game. I'm just like, I think it's so sad that didn't become a series.
There was like a bunch of them, 4 or 5 of them.
Were there?
Yeah.
I thought there was the one and then the bad one.
There were 3 for the PS2 and 1 for the Wii, at least.
There's one for the Wii?
Yeah, it was.
I thought there was one for. I thought it was one for the PS2/Xbox and then one for the PSP.
Wait, we're talking about Destroy All Humans, right?
Yes, Destroy All Humans. That's,
okay.
Yeah. I know I said Humans Must Die.
Oh, there was one for the PSP too, but
Yeah.
there definitely was one for the Wii. It wasn't very good.
Huh.
But yeah, it kind of became a series. But I got so excited because they were selling it on a Humble Bundle a while back. And like, I just went all out. I bought like the full Humble Bundle, like the $12 Humble Bundle, only to realize that it was for PS4 only.
Wait, they had a PS4 Humble Bundle?
Yeah, sometimes they do Humble Bundles for different consoles.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I ended up giving it to a friend who had a PS4. So, I mean, it worked out.
Yeah, $12 a gift for a friend.
Yeah, I was just so bummed because I really wanted to replay through those again.
What you should have been is like, hey dude, you want some free games? Cool, but I get to come over and play one of them on your console.
He texted me afterwards. He's like, dude, Destroy All Humans is awesome. And there was like 40 games or something.
Yeah.
And that was the one he picked out, and I'm like,
yes! It's honestly a good game, which is so weird because the premise... Is there even a story to those games? Does it matter at all?
I enjoy it. It's kind of it's similar to Invader Zim.
I never watched Invader Zim.
Well, it's similar to that.
Oh, okay, cool. No, because all I remember is it just was fucking hilarious to 12-year-old me to just run around blowing up people's heads with telekinesis.
It's kind of political.
Is it?
Yeah. It's worth a go through, like on an emulator. I got a PS2 right over here, if you wanna. Yeah. One last thing I want to correct is they came out and said that the new Spider-Man game is going to be open world, which means that it might still be QuickTime events. One of the last ones was very close to it.
But you'll be able to control it.
Yes.
Okay.
So you can still go around the world and like affect how you want to move, and cause that was one of the things I was worried about.
Yeah.
Which I don't actually know if either of us are going to end up buying this game.
Is it on PC?
I don't know.
Because if it's not, then I'm not buying
Yeah,
it.
absolutely not. Speaking of things that are awesome and PC related, the PlayStation 3 emulator is finally somewhat working.
Is it?
We've got mostly playable frame rates for, I think Forza. I know for a fact Ni no Kuni, which I know you really wanted to play. You actually got a PS3
I own
for
a
that.
PS. Like, I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I was like, wait, I have a PS3. I don't need to emulate anything. I could just jailbreak my PS3 if I really had
Or
to.
just go buy Ni no Kuni.
Or just go buy Ni no Kuni. It's like $15.
Yeah, or eBay, you can probably get it cheaper.
Yeah, I was looking at it on Amazon. I should really just buy that game.
I keep hearing really good things about it, and they're making Ni no Kuni too.
They're making a sequel, which
So-
I'll probably not get to play because
Because it's
probably
PS4 only.
it'll be a PS4 exclusive. Yeah.
All about those exclusives. Speaking of PlayStation, they recently had a problem with PayPal. Did you hear about it?
PlayStation always has issues with that, so no, but I can guess.
Do you wanna? Give it a go.
PlayStation ran into a problem with PayPal, wherein there were a bunch of chargebacks because PayPal is a bunch of cunts, or
No, or you got it.
I got it.
You got it.
There we
First
go.
Try.
First try.
There was a bunch of chargebacks for apparently no reason. It started first with the EU, and then it went on to America. And I still don't think we know what happened with this.
PayPal are a bunch of cunts. I covered this.
But, yeah, everyone's accounts just started getting banned off of PlayStation. And
yeah, because it would ban your account if you charged back.
Yep.
Shit.
So it's going crazy right now. I think some of the cases have been solved, but I don't think all of them have.
Yeah, because, like, would PlayStation 4 even be aware when you pay through PayPal? Versus, like,
yes.
like other payment? So, how easy is it to confirm whether or not a chargeback was due to PayPal or due to...
Well, the problem right now is that they're both saying it's the other side.
Oh. You know, I'm gonna... based on track records, I'm gonna side with Sony on this.
I'm gonna side with PayPal.
Really?
Yeah, Sony has had the worst track record with everything. Especially when it comes to PlayStation
PayPal has been almost
Live.
Worse.
Or PlayStation Network.
Because PayPal's known for just, like, randomly banning people, randomly doing chargebacks. PayPal is known for being one of the most arbitrary money handlers in the history of the planet. They will just randomly... Oh, we're randomly charging you $10 on your account because... Or, like, we're randomly banning your account. Did you hear... I don't remember where I heard this, but there was a spat of PayPal banning people because they went back and looked at people's records and figured out that a decade beforehand, they had made their account before they were 18.
That is hilarious.
That they were currently like 25 or 26, maybe even older, but they had made their account before they were 18, so they were retroactively banning people. Like perma-bans, not just to like your account and your money that's on your account,
right? But
straight up to like your name is banned from PayPal.
I have a new PayPal account now. I had to make it
I can't
for
get a
selling
PayPal
stuff.
account.
That's because you have the dumbest bank in America.
No, it has nothing to do with my bank. PayPal insists that my address doesn't exist. I called them and talked to their customer support. They told me that my home did not exist. And then hung up on me. So fuck PayPal.
I had to make a new PayPal account, but I kind of want to go back and actually check now to see if my old PayPal account exists.
Yeah.
To see if maybe I got banned. So... another PlayStation story, which, whatever. Did you ever play Jak and Daxter?
I did play Jak and Daxter.
You enjoyed it, right?
I really like Jak and Daxter 1, which is the only one I have played.
I really like Jak and Daxter 3. I didn't like 2, and I never played 1. But they just leaked. I don't know who leaked this, but that ESRB has just rated Jak 1 through X.
1 through X?
It went 1, 2, 3, X.
Was X a game that has been out? Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, is that a new game? No. Okay.
No, it was just a racing game.
Why would they re-rate them?
For the PlayStation 4.
Okay, fair enough. Why would they re-rate them?
I think it's just a process they have to go to.
Really?
Yeah.
It's if you were like, it's the same game.
I'm wondering if, since they've compiled them maybe into one game, since it's a different piece of software.
And maybe because it has different assets, like maybe the rule is like, well, you changed art assets, like you updated textures, you updated models, now we need to make sure that you didn't slip in a titty somewhere that would suddenly make your E game into, you know, an NC-17 game.
Okay, so I don't want to dwell on this too long, but did you hear the rumor about Nier?
Automata?
Yeah, Nier Automata. That there was an anus in the game.
Wasn't that entirely made up?
It was entirely made up.
Yeah.
But supposedly, if you looked at one of the characters' panties, you could see anus.
To be fair, so, kind of tangent, and then we'll get back to that point. Summer Games Done Quick started this morning.
Yeah, I know, we're competing right now.
Yes, we are
Anyone
competing.
watching, go watch that. It's for charity.
It's way better. It's way better than anything we're going to do here. But I woke up at 7 a.m. our time when they started, which I think is like, I think it's like midnight their time. Or maybe it's later. I don't know.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I woke up at 7 a.m. our time because the first game that they ran in SGDQ this year, the very first game that they started off, was a disabled guy playing Nier Automata one-handed.
Oh, that's cool.
It was really cool. He had like a setup on one of his analog sticks to make it higher, so he could control it with his palm. and then he wrapped his hand around, and he was controlling the triggers with his, like, all of his fingers, and then his thumb was hitting all the buttons.
That's cool.
It was really interesting to watch. And it was like, watching it, you cannot tell that the guy's one-handed. If you just watch the screen, because they had a hand cam, where you're, like, obviously seeing that this guy's doing it one-handed, but looking at the screen, like, all of his camera movement is exactly the way I would do it. All of his, like, movement is the same. He's way better at the game than I am.
Of course, he's a speedrunner.
He's a speedrunner. He did, like, it was a really cool run. But, to get back to our point, I could see how someone would assume that you may be able to see at least 2B's anus in that game, because, Jesus, the fucking, the, like, leotard they, like, shoved her into is the weirdest, skimpiest, like, fetish made outfit you've ever seen. And you spend, like, 50% of that game staring at her ass.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't want to dwell on that too much, just because
let's move on.
Of the nature of it.
Yeah.
So you like Spider-Man somewhat, and I'm super excited for the new movie. And they did something really awesome to advertise it. They actually made a VR experience for the PlayStation 4.
That's cool. It's probably also to advertise their game.
Yeah. It's mostly for... I think it's mostly for the movie, but it's completely free, and it's mostly just like shooting barrels as Spider-Man and doing a little bit of web slinging. They don't want to make you sick because it's VR.
Yeah, because I imagine people are like, walking around makes me sick. Okay, but how about a grappling hook? No. That sounds like the... Okay, if you don't get sick walking around in VR, because some people don't have that problem, I imagine you still get sick if you're swinging on buildings in VR.
Well,
like looking up and looking down. You're
basically,
like,
everyone got sick from Mirror's Edge, and this has to be that times 10.
Yeah, was Mirror's Edge?
It was hacked into it.
Okay,
into the original when the Vive was just coming out. Or the Oculus was just coming out.
Yeah, Vive was later.
Oh god, I got news on them. But I think that's really cool, because it's been a long time since we've used video games to advertise movies. Like, we used to do it a lot even to the PlayStation 2 era. Like, what, was it Burger or Sneak King?
Sneak King,
was just for, Burger King.
Here's the thing. Sneak King was the good game, but when you bought those meals, you had a chance to get one of 4 games. And there was Sneak King, which was good, and then there was, like, a kart racing one. And there were like 3 others, and one was a skateboarding game. I think it was the Tony Hawk engine, but it was just Burger King.
That's dope.
I think it was like a really tiny arena that wasn't interesting at all to play in. But so, hey, I went to Burger King and got a burger, and I got a free game. So whatever.
But like even Tony Hawk back in the day used to do things where
you can play Shrek.
You could play Shrek, you could play Spider-Man, you could play Iron Man.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like Iron Man's suit isn't really conducive to riding a skateboard.
Yeah. And most of the stuff with him was, like, using his rocket jets, like, off the skateboard and then to do cool flips and stuff.
Yeah.
I know this because I beat that game legitimately so I could play him on my second playthrough of that game. I love that game.
Yeah. Most of the Tony Hawk games are solid.
Oh, yeah.
Really, well, like half of them are some of the best games that have ever come out, and half of them are garbage, which is hilarious.
That's the newer ones. They're not very good. And
there was one good newer one, I think.
Most of the newer one, the most recent one wasn't even finished when it came out.
Yeah.
They just said the team just stopped developing it, and it's obvious in the game. And then
what was the game that didn't have a final boss fight? Because Shadow of Mordor.
Really?
Yeah, Shadow of Mordor's final boss fight is a QTE.
Oh.
It's not even hard. It's like 3 buttons that flash on the screen for like 5 seconds apiece.
That's a bummer.
It's kind of a bummer. I guess the DLC added a final boss fight.
Okay, that's good.
Kind of like how Fallout 3's DLC added an ending.
I enjoyed the ending of Fallout 3.
Thematically, it works. It doesn't work as a game, though.
I played through that game a couple of times. I played through that game without the DLC and with the DLC, and I prefer it without the DLC for the ending.
For a story, yes. For a gameplay experience, no.
Well, as someone who'd played Bethesda games before, I know you do the side quests, and then if you're bored,
And
you
then
do
you
the
go
main
do
story.
the end quest, yeah.
I didn't actually do that for Fallout 3. I basically just sped through the main story. And
okay. Finish your thing.
And I was a little bit annoyed that, like, I didn't get to keep playing.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have been way more annoyed, and I was way more annoyed when I did. Because nothing mattered at that point.
Yeah.
And going back into the world after I'm supposed to have saved the world? I mean, I guess I didn't save it, but you know what happens at the end.
Yeah, but nothing changed.
Yeah, there are a couple of quests that come on afterwards that, like, kind of try and show you that it changed, but it wasn't enough.
Even that's not enough, because in one of the endings, kind of spoiler over the next 10 seconds for Fallout 3's ending, in one of the endings, you're supposed to kill all of the irradiated shit in the wasteland.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all of the super mutants and stuff are supposed to die. So why do they still exist?
Yeah.
After, it doesn't make sense. But, my most recent playthrough of Fallout 3, I did, like, a pretty standard playthrough. But at one point, I was walking through just, like, random area, like you do in those games.
Right.
And I stopped in a place because I was like, oh, I'm going to loot this place real quick.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a junkyard or something. And I walk in, and I go in the basement, and I turn a corner, and I'm like, oh shit, I forgot that this is where the sleep pods are for the main story.
You're talking about Fallout 4.
No. I'm
Right?
talking about Fallout 3.
Oh!
Where
the
you go
sleep
into
pod
memory lane.
Yeah!
Yes. I randomly stumbled, because I'd forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
I remembered that was in it, but I had no recollection where you go to do that. And I just happened to stumble on it, and I was like, okay, I remember why these games are good. Because you can just do shit like that.
Yeah.
Because I'd been like, fuck you, Moriarty, I'm not paying you money.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't gone and, like, tried to find my dad at all. Like, my character was not really interested in the main story, and then I stumbled onto it, and that was so compelling.
Man, I never
that
pay Moriarty. Sorry.
I usually do.
I always just hack his computer.
I wasn't aware that was an option.
Yeah, you just go in like, no one's ever in that room.
Except for Moriarty sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just go walk back there, hack his computer, and you get all his info.
Yeah.
It's a Bethesda game. There's always a lot of ways to do stuff.
There's always a lot of ways to do stuff. I think that's true of pretty much any Bethesda game.
Yeah.
Even going back to, like, Daggerfall.
There was a couple... I thought Skyrim was the weakest for that. Fallout has
I
it.
would agree. I would agree that Skyrim is the worst for that.
Skyrim had a couple of places where you're supposed to do that, and they just, like, don't make it obvious enough.
It's so jarring in Skyrim when you realize that you can violate the quest order.
Yeah.
Because most of the game heavily discourages that.
Yeah.
Which is so fucking strange. But yeah, like the Blood on the Ice, which is the quest where there's a murder in...
the murder mystery.
In Windhelm, which a lot of people said is one of the better quests in that game.
I disagree. I wholeheartedly disagree. It's totally awesome when you break the quest order for that.
But if you don't, it feels so bad.
And there's no indicator that you're supposed to be able to do that. Even if you know what the actual murderer is, there's no indicator. I literally knew who it was, and I had to look up a walkthrough to figure out how I'm supposed to do it.
To figure out how you're supposed to do it. Yeah, because the first time I went through it, I didn't realize you could break it, and I walked away from it being like, I'm pretty sure I just, like, killed an innocent man. Like, I'm really positive that guy didn't do it, but I had no other dialogue option than that guy did it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be like, maybe there should have been just, like, an extra dialogue option that was like, I feel like I have a suspect, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
And then he would have been like, go talk to so-and-so, and then maybe even make that an optional quest marker, or don't. Just have it as a dialogue thing that it's like, oh, that's where I need to go to finish this quest properly. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple other quests like that in the game.
So dumb.
Are you aware that there's actually... You know how in that game they have the quest list, and there's a marker for, like, this is the thing you need to do next, and then there's a marker that appears when you complete a part of a quest? Mm-hmm. Are you aware that there's actually a marker for failing parts of quests?
Yes.
I had never seen one, because you never fail quests in that game.
Yeah, it's
Ever.
very rare.
If you fail a quest in that game, you generally are, like, doing, like, the Civil War, and you, like, lock yourself into half of the Civil War, and you just immediately gets a thing that's like, you failed all these other quests that you never even heard about, because that's just how it's coded.
Yeah. So have you heard of, like, totally going away from Skyrim again?
Fine, yeah.
But, have you heard of Warframe? Have you played any?
I haven't. I know that our friend, Joe was into it for a long time.
My friend George was into it. It's a free mecha MMO.
Right.
Kind of in the style of...
Mecha Ninjas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In, like, a third-person Destiny sort of fashion. Their developers recently just shut down a data mining website. That was, like, going through all of their stuff and just releasing things, and a lot of the community was kind of annoyed, because it's one of those games where, like...
It's an MMO.
You get random drops, and to garner goodwill with the community, they just came out and dumped all of their own information.
I mean...
Which I thought is amazing.
I feel like that's a really good alternative to data mining.
Yeah.
Because you can be like, okay, we understand that you want, like, drop information and quest information, because sometimes you need that stuff. Because you're taking this game really seriously, and we want you to take this game really seriously. So here's that information, but by doing it internally, as opposed to, like, kind of letting data mining happen, you can then control what people are aware of.
And I just like that developers can now feel like they're comfortable just giving out the drops, because for most of the time it doesn't matter. It just helps people plan out what they want to do with their day.
Right.
Because the people who play MMOs, like, I know I've gotten into this cycle, you want to play it like 40 hours a day, and you want to be sure you're like 40 hours a day. Yeah.
40 hours a day. No, you do. If there were 40 hours in a day, there are MMO players who would play every fucking minute.
You want to make sure you're getting the most out of that time, because you can't get everything.
Right.
So it's cool. However, as a game developer, like, that hurts my soul a little bit, because going back to the .hack thing, I love the idea of legendary items that are, like, rare and mysterious.
That it's like, one person in the game probably has this item, but nobody's actually seen it.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. And it doesn't work with an MMO always. Yeah. Because, like, sometimes people will just stop playing, and, I mean, there's probably ways to get around it. If I ever design an MMO, I'm gonna have legendary, one person has some items.
Yeah. I feel like it's so weird. Do you think that the MMO culture that exists currently would be tolerant of that sort of thing?
No, I don't know. How's Dota with those, like, 3 items that you can only get?
People drop, like, $14,000 on them?
Yeah.
That's how it works.
I think so.
People don't rage over not having couriers.
As long as it's not the most powerful item. As long as that person's not going to beat everyone just because they got a lucky drop.
One thing that I felt was really cool, and actually WoW did this, when Cataclysm came out, WoW was like, a bunch of our world spaces are permanently changed, because theoretically this is some kind of apocalypse.
Right.
Which I thought was really cool, because to me, the idea that now something is going to permanently change within the game world, that is going to change how people experience the game and how people play the game, that is external of mechanics. It's just world space. I feel like that's a really cool idea in an MMO, because it's something that sort of would only work in an MMO. Because in a single player game like Skyrim, if say at some point in the Skyrim main story, Alduin comes down and does the thing that Deathwing does in WoW, just destroys huge swaths of the land permanently. It'd be like, if you decided as a player, I don't like that being destroyed, you could just reload a save before it happened, or go start a new game. Whereas in an MMO, it's like, no, that's just how it is now.
Well, I think that's the big draw of those MMOs where the people build the cities and things.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's just, you create these structures that, like, are big processes, and it changes the world. I love the idea of that. I don't know where to jump in with those kind of MMOs, though. Because, like, I feel like I'm not the kind of person who buys games right when they come out. One, because I'm skeptical of them, and two, because I don't have the money to drop on like a brand new game.
Yeah.
But like coming in that when it's almost dying is a really bad idea, just because one, the world's not changing anymore. Two, you probably can't do all the big things.
Yeah.
It's really, you have to get in there right at the beginning, which sucks.
Which does suck, and even if you get in there right at the beginning, you probably still won't be one of the top players, because the top players are, let's be frank, a bunch of neats who never leave their basement dens and play 16, 18, 20 hours a day.
Yeah.
And they're always going to be higher level than you. They're always going to have better gear than you.
And there's not really a way to fix that in an MMO of that style. Just
no,
because
there isn't.
That's the draw.
The way
you can play forever.
Yeah, the way that they fix it in WoW is obviously that there's sort of a cap. There's a level cap. There's theoretically your best gear set.
Yeah.
And once you have that, it's like, cool. Even though that guy may have 4,000 hours more time in WoW than me, we are now, maybe not skill-wise, but gear-wise, progression-wise, we're on the same level. Which means that the barrier to entry is never farther than level cap. Whereas an MMO like Mabinogi, an MMO like that, or like Ultima Online was, the people who had been there the longest and the people who had played the most would always be so far and away better than anybody else that it almost killed fun. Which, do you think that there's a design decision that could prevent that?
It's a power creep problem, and I don't know. I think maybe just giving new players fun stuff. Because that's what kept us going. Me and Danielle played Mabinogi maybe a year ago.
Yeah. And
so it's at its end where everyone's basically the highest level you can get done with the story.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that kept us going is an event calendar, which a lot of MMOs do now, where at the end of the month we get like really cool mounts and we're getting awesome stuff in between. And every once in a while we'd see a player with like crazy stuff, but we didn't entirely feel like it was out of reach. But also another nice thing that helped with that game is almost every item is sellable, or buyable. And so near the end time of us playing that, we had some of that really cool stuff. We were like running around with laser swords that we had bought off the market.
I remember your laser swords, yeah.
Yeah. And you just have to find a way to get players from that bottom level to that high level, I think.
Yeah.
Speaking of MMOs, Elder Scrolls Online's been having some weird problems lately. Do you have a house in Elder Scrolls Online? Because you've played.
I have played. I have not played enough to get a house. No.
Okay. I know some houses you have to pay actual money for, I think.
Yes.
A little while back, about a month, maybe 2 months ago, some people noticed that there's a house. I forget what it's called. It's in a cave. It's $150.
Okay. Real
world dollars.
Jesus.
Yeah. And it's considered like a status symbol in the game. It's the house everyone really wants. I think you can buy it with septims as well, or whatever.
Which is probably it's septims. Wait, no, it's not septims. It's drakes.
Okay.
Because it's lore. It's pre-septim dynasty, so they're not septims yet.
Anyway, so everyone wants this amazing house, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, water started falling in from the ceiling.
Huh.
Yeah. And so people were like writing reports about this, and Bethesda's like, we'll look into it. Or not Bethesda, whoever.
It's ZeniMax Online. Did they literally flood a player house and then go, haha, shouldn't have bought underground real estate, idiots?
And then a wing of the house gets blocked off by a rock. And so people are really angry because there's just a part of their house they cannot access anymore, and their ceiling is flooding.
Yeah.
And like people are really harassing Bethesda, trying to like fix what's going on. They're like, we'll look into it. And then suddenly other houses start losing stuff. Like little decorations, little knickknacks, things that probably add a little bit of geometry. But like aren't items.
Huh.
rocks on a windowsill or like a potted plant or something just start going missing from a bunch of player houses, and everyone's really annoyed because they buy these nice houses and they're just like getting destroyed. And it's not every house of that type either. And some people think that it's going to be microtransactions, that you're going to have to start buying things inside of these houses that you've already bought. Some people think that it's just trying to make the game run better.
It's possible.
But Bethesda has said nothing, and it's been months.
Okay, here is my crazy crackpot lore guy theory as to what's going on. So in the lore for Elder Scrolls, Mehrunes Dagon is one of the Daedric princes, one of the demon princes. He's the main antagonist of not just Oblivion, but also Arena?
I don't know.
I don't know. I never played Arena or Daggerfall because they're bullshit. But Mehrunes Dagon is the Daedric Prince of Destruction. And we found out through some lore books that he has actually been alive for a very, very incredibly long time. Like, longer than most other things in the setting.
He's passed a couple of songs, right?
Yeah, he's passed through a couple of what are called kalpas, which are basically like, for people who are familiar with Hinduism, it's like the Vedic cycles. But he used to be this thing called the Leaper Demon King, and what he used to do was he would steal things that are in existence and hide them so that he could secret them into the next reborn world. So here's my crazy person pitch. Now that he's been caught by Alduin, he was required to destroy all of the things that he brought into the future. So maybe the whole plot of all of this, at least as far as like the little things disappearing, is that Mehrunes Dagon is stealing all the things back that he put into the world to destroy them again to free himself from Alduin's curse.
I 100% don't think that's what's happening, but since I don't play Elder Scrolls Online, I'm keeping that as headcanon.
I mean, that's... I don't know. Maybe it's presented differently in-game. Maybe in-game, like... I don't know. If they're literally just disappearing, like, the first place my head goes for Elder Scrolls is it's lore fuckery. Like, something weird is going on with the lore. Like, they're setting us up for another DLC. Or something.
Maybe.
And it's gonna be like, haha, it was the plot of this Daedric Prince the whole time.
I feel like that's a really awful way to do that. Let's fuck with this $150 house.
I almost feel like that might be a different thing because, like, the scale is so different, right? Like, flooding a house
It's not flooding. It just looks like rain's coming in.
Oh. Weird.
Yeah.
I would almost like that more.
People think it's a glitch because it's got a waterfall attached to it. No one has any idea what's going on.
Yeah, everybody seems... Yeah. Elder Scrolls Online is so weird because when it first came out, they were like, fuck lore, fuck people who like the old Elder Scrolls games. We're making a high fantasy MMO that's gonna fight WoW IRL. And, they kind of are succeeding a little bit. Like, they're keeping their numbers. But then they started doing weird shit. Like, they released a DLC, and in the DLC, there was this place called, the Elk's Heart. Or, I think it's the Elk's Heart. Stag's Heart? Something like that. Which is this whole dungeon, all related to super deep lore. That, when it came out, like, people in the lore community were not really ready for it, because up until that point, everybody in the lore community was of the opinion that Elder Scrolls Online shits on all of the canon and lore, so fuck Elder Scrolls Online, we don't care about it. But then this stuff came out, and everybody was like, wait a second, should we be paying attention to what's going on in Elder Scrolls Online? Because some of the stuff that's happening is cool, like, they started exploring Piondia. Pandonia, sorry. I pronounce a lot of things incorrectly. Pandonia, which is where all the sea elves are from, which, up until Elder Scrolls Online, there was like a book that mentioned the Sea Elves, and there was a map from Daggerfall on a globe that's super pixely that you sort of see the vague shape of another continent on. That people were like, that's Pandonia, obviously. And it was. But like now we have all of this information about the Sea Elves that we never had before.
That's cool. We know they exist now?
Yeah, because before there was a question as to whether they even still existed or ever existed. So that's mildly canon now. The canon distinction between the two games is very tenuous.
I'm just gonna give it to Elder Scrolls Online right now, because fucking Bethesda has no desire to make a new Elder Scrolls game. They just want to keep making Skyrim.
Yeah, so that might be our only source of lore for a couple of years, so get used to it.
How do we keep coming back to Skyrim? This is the Skyrim podcast right today.
Because Skyrim's a good game.
Anyway, Rust. You've played Rust, right?
I own Rust. I've probably played like 20 minutes of Rust.
Rust is made by Gary Newman, who, if I'm not wrong, made Gary's mod.
Yeah, who made Gary's mod, yeah.
Yeah. It's been out for quite a long time. It's mostly been early access. I think it's still early access.
Mm-hmm.
He just came out, and he actually showed off his numbers for refunds. Because refunds are kind of a new Steam thing, and everyone was kind of unsure how they were going to affect everything.
Mm-hmm.
He has had 300,000 refunds of the game. And that totals up to $4 million.
Jesus.
6% of all of the people who have bought it since refunds have come out have refunded it. And he's totally okay with it. And I think that's awesome. Yeah. One, refunds are definitely pro-consumer.
Yeah.
It's an early access game, so who knows if it'll work or be what people expect.
Mm-hmm.
And also, 6% of his stuff is getting refunded, and that's $4 million.
Yeah, that was going to be my point.
He's not hurting.
No, he's like, oh, I didn't notice.
And he just came out, he showed off the numbers all himself, because Steam doesn't show that to people.
I'm surprised Steam didn't ping him for that, because a lot of stuff that happens on Steam is under NDA.
It hasn't been shown yet if they will. It's fairly new. I think it happened yesterday or the day before.
Oh. Well, I doubt they'll fight him specifically.
Yeah, he's got a really good relationship with Valve.
Because of Gary's mod.
But I don't know. I think it's cool that he's a developer that's pro refunds. I don't refund things a lot. I've refunded one thing, and I tried to refund No Man's Sky because that was the hip thing to do.
Yeah. I don't think I've refunded anything.
I refunded one game because it would not play.
Yeah,
like it
fair enough.
Physically just wouldn't play. Oh, and I refunded Black Desert.
Did you?
Because it wouldn't link to an account I already had. So I had to buy it off of Black Desert's website.
Okay.
But I felt like every time I did... I guess everyone feels justified refunding something, but I never play a game that I really don't like and refund it.
Yeah.
Like even Lisa, I've got less than an hour in. I think it's janky. I understand why people love it. I'm not going to refund it.
Yeah.
I think the developer deserves money. Maybe that's just something with me, though. But
if he made something interesting enough that you felt it was worth buying,
then
it doesn't... That interest may go away because you find that it's not what you were looking for, but he still created something that compelled you enough to pay that money.
Yeah. Which I can see why people might want to refund that. If it's not the game they expect it to be.
Yeah.
Or if it's... Like, Lisa feels unplayable to me, just because of the jumping off cliff thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which I can totally see someone refunding a game for.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But, I don't know. That's just not me.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of...
Wait.
Oh, okay.
Can we take a break real quick? I gotta go to the bathroom.
Yep.
5 minute, 10 minute break.
Pausing
Something
everything.
like that.
Alright, well I have one more story.
Okay.
And then I really, really want to get into the game that I've been playing. So the story I've got is the latest update to the Nintendo Switch Source Development Kit was leaked. And it includes some features that I think are super important, but sound super dumb.
Okay.
The first feature, and actually we had a little bit of an issue with this, is it adds a guest login.
Oh. Well, yeah, that's nice. That should probably be on most consoles.
Right?
Like, by default.
I get why they didn't do it at first, because the save files are set to accounts. But having a single guest account is just fine. Like, you're going to have a save file on that guest account. Yeah. And it's probably going to be the one that you just get rid of anyway.
Yeah.
But when you played on my Switch, I had to create a whole account for you and put in your name and icon and...
Which I then proceeded to play on your Switch for like an hour, and then I was done.
And I'm not going to go through and delete that. It's like in case you ever come over and play again. But it just seems weird that they wouldn't have that option, because you can't play without it. And I'm not going to delete my 100%ed Zelda file for you. Sorry.
No.
They're also adding transferring saves, which wasn't a thing before.
Yeah, that's important.
And I thought that was really weird, because it's a cartridge-based system, and all the saves are just on the system. Yeah. So, any console that has saves on the system should be able to transfer them.
I remember being a little kid and having a Game Boy Color, and trying to figure out between me and my friends, we had an argument about whether it saves on the cartridge or on the system. I was right, it was saving on the cartridge.
Right.
But everybody assumed it saved on the system because everyone had home consoles, and they all saved on memory cards. So they were like, oh, well, I don't see a memory card,
right? So
it must be built into the Game Boy. Because that was how they were used to it.
I was with you on this. I mean, I wasn't in this argument with you, but I always knew that they did cartridges, because I grew up on handhelds.
Yeah.
The first system I had was a Game Boy Black and White, which, dear God, awful.
I started with color.
That's a good place to start. The Black and White is a bulky fucking brick.
It is a brick.
And all the games on it were shit.
Oh, it had Tetris.
Yeah, Tetris.
It had the original Pokemon.
I still have my Tetris cartridge for that, and I'm so sad because my Game Boy Advance just died. Batteries exploded in it, so I can't play my Tetris game anymore.
I blew up the batteries in my Game Boy Color a couple of years ago, and I was really sad. That Game Boy Color actually survived a car crash. But it did not survive me leaving the batteries in for a couple months.
Yeah.
Which is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I even was like, oh shit, and I tried to like clean it out, but it was like in the motherboard of the thing.
Yep.
Like it was
It
gone.
just corrodes everything.
It is. It's so sad.
Did you ever play the Castlevania for the Game Boy? It is the hardest game I've ever played.
I played part of it because in Castlevania Portrait of Ruin, there is a mini game where you go back and play that.
Are you sure it's not the NES one? Because the NES one and the Game Boy one are completely different. The NES one is playable. The Game Boy one, I cannot get past the second level.
I will say that it felt unplayable, and I will say that I believe it was monochrome.
Okay,
so I think it was the Game Boy one.
I was never like the kind of kid who liked hard games, and I was like a very ragey kid.
I was always very zen. Well, I got very zen very quick because the second I started raging at everything, my parents' solution was, okay, you're starting to get angry, the console turns off, the TV turns off, go outside. And so at a certain point, I learned, like, okay, if I get angry, I don't get to play this anymore. So I'm going to be very calm.
I have to say, that was the worst game I've ever played.
Yeah.
But...
Really?
Yes.
You haven't... You buy dollar games on Steam.
Yep. And... it's got to be some nostalgia in here of just me being an angry kid in an unbeatable game.
Reverse nostalgia. Hate nostalgia.
Yes, it is. It really is. But getting into good games.
Okay.
I finally went through and I spent the last of my Steam cash on some games for the Steam sale. And I've only managed to play one of them, so I'm going to have a bunch of games for next week.
Okay.
Because this game is so good. The game is called Valley. And it's very highly rated, but I don't think a lot of people have played it. From the just looking at the store page, it looks like your standard Unreal Engine, vaguely fantasy game. Okay. Like, it kind of looks like, why would you buy this? And you kind of like, looks like you're a walking simulator with some shooting. It is not. The first thing you notice about this game is it has the absolute best controls of any game I've ever played.
Really?
The game is about you going into this valley looking for what's called the life seed.
Okay.
And on the way you get this body contraption that kind of looks like a simple version of the suit that Ridley gets in Aliens.
Okay.
And it lets you run really fast and jump. It kind of feels like Mirror's Edge, but better.
So is this fantasy or is this sci-fi? Or is it a blend?
It's a good blend.
Okay.
The game, when I was playing it, the game felt to me, and I kept saying this over and over in my head because I couldn't think of a better analogy. It feels like BioShock Infinite, Mirror's Edge, and that first time you watched Lord of the Rings. That feeling you get in your stomach.
Huh. Interesting.
I cannot recommend this game enough.
Valley.
It's
could they have chosen a more generic title?
It looks awful. Like it doesn't look like a bad game. It looks like your standard Unreal Engine game. It's very pretty. But like all of the images just look bland pretty. Like you put some Unreal Engine assets together.
Yeah.
But when you're playing it, the fluidity of motion, like it's got acceleration that just feels on the ball. You're spinning around, jumping. There's grappling hooks. There's double jumps. There's vague shooter missions. It's enough to make me cry. It was just amazing. I think it fucked itself though. It was $6 on sale.
Jeez.
And I think that it should have been $5.
Because $5 puts it under the threshold to show up on that list.
Yes.
Yeah.
It does not advertise well.
Yeah.
Like, it's the kind of game you really need to sit down and play to feel how it plays through. So you get this suit, and it's at first you feel like it's just a parkour suit, like you're just running through, and then you find out that you can actually affect life. There's trees and bushes and vines and all of these beautiful forest areas, and they're all split into things that are living. And you can take life, and you can give life. And you have to solve puzzles with this, and it also acts as your life source. It's got this really weird lore where I felt like they were trying to do the thing where you kind of learn the lore piece by piece through the story.
Yeah.
And there was supposed to be some theory stuff, but I think it's a little too given to you to actually make it theory worth. But it's a really good story if you go through and read all the stuff.
Yeah.
The story is told through a little bit of it telling you on the screen, like little snippets of what your character's thinking, and also a lot of pages that you find throughout the map.
Which is kind of a terrible way to do it.
They're short, and they're not super exposition dumpy. A lot of it is from people who lived on the island and just what they're thinking at that time. So it doesn't feel like, oh, now the doctor is telling me about exactly what his experiment was doing. It's like there's these gray areas and black spots where you don't know, because it's just like their letters or things they left or diary entries.
Yeah. Which,
once again, not great. Especially in a game where you're supposed to be moving really fast. But I didn't feel like it took anything away from it.
Huh?
Weirdly enough, it was made by the guys who made Slenderman.
Well, I never got the sense that they were bad devs, just that Slenderman was really low effort.
Yeah.
So, I'm not super surprised that they went on to make a game.
The only reason I know, it doesn't feel like Slenderman. At all. The only reason I know is because there's a couple of really well done Easter eggs in the game. Which, because I want you to play this at some point, I will, make you sit down and play this game.
Yeah, I've tried to do that with you with a couple of games, and you still haven't played Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a good excuse for that.
We need to have a, make each other play games day.
Yeah, let's stream it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll do that. I have 2 games that I want you to play, and I'm actually going to talk about one of them after you're done.
Okay. It's just... It's a hard game to put into words, because it's so many pieces working together. I do want to say one thing about one level, in that there is a chase level where nothing is chasing you, and it is the best chase level I've ever played.
Huh.
It looks almost identical to one of the Sonic levels in the Black Knight, I think is what it was called.
Jesus,
yeah.
The Black Knight's a terrible game. But yeah.
But done well.
Okay.
It's all first person, and it just... Everything about that game makes you feel awesome. And it's just... You're going to play it. We're going to stream it. It's going to be fantastic.
Okay.
We're doing a stream day.
Okay.
What are you doing this week?
Fuck all.
Cool, we're streaming.
Yeah.
What have you been playing?
So, I've been playing 2 games, but because you talked about that game, you reminded me of a game that sounds... A lot of the mechanics you were talking about reminded me of this game, despite me being deadly sure that they're very different games. So there was this game. It was one of the first games ever to go through Steam Greenlight. And everybody forgot about it almost immediately because it pitches as the most generic game ever made. It is called Miasmata.
I've seen this and I've never wanted to play it because I look at it and it looks awful.
It's not a graphically... It's not a high fidelity game. Not even
graphically, it looks like a walking simulator from everything on the Steam page.
Okay, so on the Steam page, they try to pitch it as like a survival, like, horror game. Which it sort of is, but that's like... It's the most disingenuous way to describe the game possible. There is a monster. You are on an island. So first of all, you're dropped on this island, and the first thing you realize, maybe is that the game kind of looks like shit. Like, visually, the game is... But definitely, you will realize almost immediately that it controls like you are a drunk toddler high on opium.
You've told me about this.
You, like... stumble around in such a weird stupor that for the first 10 minutes, you're like, I'm not going to play this anymore because the controls suck. And then, at a certain point, one, you realize that you are a plague victim, and so it kind of makes, like, a thematic sense, but also, it gets to a point where mastering the movement feels fucking awesome. Like, when you start, you're, like, toddling around, like, barely able to get anywhere. But at a certain point, I found that I could, like, run and, like, dash and do rolls and, like, skid around. Like, okay, at one point, I was running from the monster, and I see a corner in the path I'm coming up, and I just keep running, and I turn the corner, and my character slid, and it felt... And, like, your camera moves with the slide. It felt like I had took the corner too fast and my feet had gone out and I caught myself on my hand and kept running. It felt exactly like that. I was like, holy shit. This is one of the best movement systems in any game I've ever played. But it feels terrible when you start. It's so weird. And it's more of a botany simulator because the monster doesn't show up for a while. Like... 40 minutes an hour. Like, the monster takes a while to show up. But you are on this island, and it's like, this island is filled with a lot of really interesting medicinal plants, and your job is to find a cure for the plague that you have. And you are a botanist. So there's this whole, like, botany thing where you're, like, making medicines and doing, like, tests to find out the things that plants can do, and, like, learning recipes. And there's this whole story of, like, people who are supposed to be on the island researching the cure for this plague, who at the time of playing are not apparently present anymore.
Okay.
As far as you can tell. The story is fantastic, which is crazy because it's all given to you through these notes.
Wow, this does sound a little similar
it
as
sounds
we're talking
similar,
about it.
But, like, gameplay-wise, I imagine
be.
they're totally separate.
Yeah.
But there's so many interesting thematic similarities. Miasmata, I am confident I would put on, like... It's definitely not my favorite game of all time, and it's probably not even in my top 10. But if you told me, like, tell me the most interesting games you've ever played, I'd be like, Miasmata. Miasmata is definitely one of the most interesting games I've ever played from a conceptual level. And at a certain point, I was like, and the game's fucking hard. Like, not even... The game has, like, this mapping mechanic where, like, you as a character, like, you sight out objects, and then it automatically does the calculations for you, but it, like, how you would map something, you'd take a known distance to two objects, and then find the angle between those two objects, and you know exactly where you are, right? That's how the game maps things. You have to sight two different objects, and then it maps where you currently are, and it can map your like, sight lines and stuff.
That's interesting. And
so you, like, are trying to find your way around this huge island. And it's really difficult, because you're, like, trying to find, like, landmarks so you can sight from them. And the whole game is... I don't think it fits into a genre that exists. Like, it's got elements of horror, but it's also got, like, an explorer element. And yeah, it has a walking simulator element to it. But at no point was I like, I'm bored of walking places. Because there's enough things to see, and the monster adds, like, just enough of a threat that you're constantly, like, a little on edge.
Well, I would not consider that walking simulator at all. That's just horror. Like, would you consider Slenderman to be walking simulator?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I disagree. I feel like walking simulator is people talking at you and you walking. Like, That Dragon Cancer...
Gone Home, Dear Esther.
Yeah. Those, where you're literally walking for no apparent reason. Like, with Slenderman, you've got at least the puzzle of don't look at him, run away, find the pages. You're doing something.
Yeah.
With that game, you've got the monster, you're doing botany, you're finding your play, you're doing something.
It's such an interesting game. So, I wanted to talk about that real quick, because I will totally plug that game till the end of the time. Because I so wish that it had succeeded in the way that I think it deserved to. Because I think it's such a great game. That said, I played 2 games this week. One I had already played before, and had just gone back to because it had come out of early access. And that is Poi, which I talked about on one of our previous podcasts.
I think you already went through that one.
I went through most of it. It's basically like Mario Sunshine inspired collectible 3D platformer. I think, like, in terms of modern 3D platformers, it is now probably one of the best. Because when it came out of early access, suddenly there's a ton of content. Like,
oh, that's cool.
The first time I played through it, like a couple years ago, I got it in a Humble Bundle, and I 100%ed it. And when I 100%ed it, that was fairly easy to do. Now I'm looking at 100%ing it again, and I'm honestly staggered by the amount of how different it is to 100% it now versus what it was back then.
That's cool. I that's one of the ways to do early access, like we were just going on about.
And one thing that I thought was really cool, one of the areas I went to, like the first area, there were quests that I did in early access that were gone.
Were they boring quests?
I think they realized that the quests weren't working.
Oh.
And they straight up cut... Like, there was a big... one of the stages had this, like, whole setup involving, like, turtles and, like, collecting them. And it was actually... It was, like, fairly well put together. It just had some kind of janky issues where, like, water isn't super fun to move around in that game.
One of the things that we've been... going through in some of my later classes for computer science, especially the software engineering ones, is that, like, to really into these kids' heads that it's okay to get rid of code.
Yeah.
That it's okay to throw shit out. If it's not working, don't keep it in there. You're making it worse. And that's a problem that a lot of people have, and you see it a lot in games.
You do.
Especially early access, where you're like, okay, well, this first quest has to be this fetch quest so you can get to learn everyone, and also because we don't have anything else yet. but that's not fun in the end game.
Yeah.
So that's awesome that they're learning and that they can throw out all of that work, because it hurts.
I'm sure it did. And I actually missed the turtles because the turtles had a little bit of charm to them.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a quest where there was a mother turtle who lost all her turtle babies and you had to go collect them from around the level. But ultimately what that amounted to was water in that game's really slow, and then once you found the baby turtles, you had to ride them back to the mother. Which
Wait, are you telling me that one of the earliest levels was a water level?
No, it wasn't a water level. It's a level that's on a coast, and you like paddled out into this sort of bay area.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that game's really cool, and it's really tightly designed. Like, I found that if I just did all of the missions for a level, because it's got that Mario Sunshine thing where you'll go into a level and it'll be like, here's your main goal this time you're in the level. And the next time you go back, there'd be like another selection next to it to get the next collectible that's like, here's your main mission this time, and it slowly evolves the level. I found that if I did every single mission, and if I kept my eyes open while I was doing them, by the time I was done, there would only be 1 or 2 collectibles left in the stage that I hadn't seen yet.
That's how I felt with not Sunshine. I thought Sunshine was really bad about that.
Yeah, Sunshine is a
but
little
I
bad
thought
about that.
Mario 64 was that way.
And I just felt like it was really interesting because one of the collectibles in that game is areas. When you go to certain areas, you'll get a little pop-up that's like, you discovered this area, and every level has like 16 areas that you're supposed to find, and they give you the name of them so you can like sort of intuit the ones that you don't know. Like there'll be one that's like, find the bird, and you're like, what the fuck? And you look up in the sky and there's a bird, and you have to figure out how to get close enough to the bird to trigger it.
That's cool.
So that game's great. It's also just fun to look at. It's just like a kiddie adventure game visually, so it's just bright and like all the colors are very round, and the shader is very almost cell shaded. Very Wind Waker. Just that same, like, it's just very simple and pretty. Alright, so I like that. And then the other game I played, which, aside from Miasmata and Poi, which I have nothing but praise to heap upon.
Yes, rants!
I played Lichdom Battle Mage.
Why? That game's so bad.
It is a really
oh my god!
bad game.
I can participate in this conversation with you.
Um,
that game is awful. It looks
really
so pretty, doesn't it?
It does. You're like, I want to play it, and it's like, oh, I get to build my own spells and be a badass mage. Except none of the spells do any damage. Nothing's intuitive. It's so unintuitive that now there's a patch in the game that patches the inventory. So the first time you open the inventory, it's like, our inventory is really complicated, so we have created the simple inventory that you will use until you get good at the game.
Nice.
That automatically sorts everything for you, automatically upgrades all your shit for you. It does. You open the inventory, you get a series of prompts, you just hit yes, and you close the inventory.
Game design.
The game plays itself. But the first, like, level, you're like, okay, I see where this is going. It's like a fun, like, kind of almost like a reinterpretation of a hack and slash where you're just a mage and you have these really powerful spells that feel really good, and you fucking throw fire everywhere, and it's really pretty because it's a CryEngine game. And then you get to level 2, and suddenly I'm not kidding, like octuple everything's health. Everything gets so much more bullet spongy to the point where, like, in the first level, you just, like, shoot a fireball at most things, like your standard everyday fireball, and they'll just die if they're the standard enemy. Harder enemy might take 1 or 2 shots, maybe you'll charge up a shot so you do crit. In the later levels, you're, like, stacking crit, and stacking damage, and stacking dots, and then critting constantly, and charging up everything, and doing these huge things, and things are, like, not dying.
Well, let's talk game design here.
Yeah.
Like, the solution to that is, instead of a big bullet sponge enemies, you make a lot of enemies. Like,
which they did.
Yeah.
There's a lot of big bullet spongy enemies. That's one of the problems. There's so much shit at any given point that you basically can't react to it. And here's another issue I had with the game. They give you these shields.
Mm-hmm.
And the shields basically determine your health. Like, there's not, to my knowledge, another thing that determines your health. But depending on the shield you have equipped, you have these 3 different abilities that'll enable or disable themselves. You have Galvanize, which is when you block some damage. But if you have Galvanize, you can do like a parry where if you block at the right time, it'll activate a spell effect when you block, which is cool, fine. Then there's a Quick Blink, which is just like it's like a dash or a dodge in any other game. And then there's a Charged Blink, which goes a little farther and does like a big AoE when you land. Depending on the shield you have equipped, it'll enable and disable certain ones. Mm-hmm. So fairly early on, I dropped a shield that was like a lot better than the one I had. So I was like, cool, I'll wear that shield. So I put the shield on, and it's working out sort of fine for me for a while. So I like trash my shield. It's got like a trash mechanic, which games shouldn't really have a mechanic built around trash, but
I get that for that kind of game though, like Diablo or like Borderlands.
Most Diablo likes the way they solve that is they say, once you are 30 minutes into the game, you hit the toggle button that says turn off common items. And then a couple more hours into it, you turn off rares. And a couple more hours into it, you turn off everything except legendaries and artifacts.
And then there's Borderlands where 90% of that shit is shit.
Yeah, exactly. But most of the time, those games have filters so that you won't pick up the crap. You'll only pick up good stuff. Mm-hmm. But in this game, everything just automatically floats to you, which, thank God they didn't make you pick it all up, because they give you a ton of it. But anyway, I trashed my shield. I had this other shield, and the shield, I found out at the first boss, disabled my Quick Blink. But the first boss is designed around you have a Quick Blink. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a Quick Blink, you could probably beat it. Like, I'm sure it's not unbeatable, but the degree of difficulty between having it and not having it is insane. And the fact that there's, like, a really basic mechanic that removes it, but the game assumes that you would have it, is, like, so mind-bogglingly retarded.
Yeah. No, I totally feel. I played through most of that.
Really?
So I want to go back to the game design thing.
Yeah.
Like I said, the solution to that is you have a lot of enemies. You do what Doom did. Mm-hmm. You have, like, the easy enemies that make you feel like a badass that just, like, improve your ability to kill the other ones in some whatever way.
Yeah.
They could not do that.
No.
Have you heard about how bad this game is on console?
No.
It is basically unplayable. The frame rate is so low.
So, I don't have any... honestly, okay, here's part of...
But we're playing it late. Yeah, we're playing it late and on pretty good hardware.
Yeah,
like, we're not top of the line, but we've got pretty good PCs, the both of us.
Yeah.
So we didn't have issues, but, you know, like, it was on 360. Mm-hmm. Not even the one.
Yeah. That wouldn't run it
And
very
so
well.
They were constantly trying to make, like, fit the difference between making it super pretty, having some stuff on there, and also making it work on the 360.
Which is probably why all the levels feel super, super empty.
Yep.
Okay, if you want to hear about empty levels, like, there are some games that have fairly superficial levels that are fairly poorly designed. Mm-hmm. But this game takes it to this crazy, crazy level of the way that it is set up is there will be a circle with maybe a couple objects in it, and then you'll beat all the enemies in the circle, and then there will be a single path that leads to another circle, and then a single path that leads to another circle, and then maybe there will be a branching path where you can go do a bunch of other circles for loot, and then you just come back and continue your line and circle thing, and it's just nothing. There's not a single well-designed level in that game.
Yeah.
And
first one's almost okay. It's the clickbaitiest of the games.
Here's the thing. The first level has almost none of these problems.
No.
Like, the first level is a good game. Like, if they had released the first level, it would be like the demo for a game that is very potentially amazing.
Well, what happened with a lot of games on Steam, and this is way after this game came out, so I don't know what happened with this game, is a lot of games, like shovelware games, were making it so the first 2 hours of the game are awesome.
So that no one will return it before the return deadline.
Yeah. But I don't know what happened with this, because this was before there was returns on games.
I have no idea, and I don't think there's a demo for it. And most of the stuff I'd seen of it was of the second level, which is the snow level, which looks beautiful, by the way. If Skyrim looked like these snow levels, you would probably not hate it as much. The snow levels look fantastic. The first level, honestly, looks really good, too. And I kind of wish they'd stuck with what the first level had going, especially towards the beginning, because it was like a really
expensive.
Cool... They had all the assets. They modeled like an entire medieval town, and then they just did nothing with it.
Yeah.
The story, it's not standout, but honestly, like, the voice acting is definitely... I didn't have any problems with it. I wouldn't call it stellar, but I also wouldn't shit on it at all. I think the voice acting's pretty solid. Mm-hmm. The story as written is very cliched, but it seems like they weren't focusing on it, and it's fairly well delivered. One thing that I really like that they did in it is they have sort of these audio log type things where you'll like walk up to a thing and it'll show you something that happened in the past in that location, and it's basically its way of like...
Oh, I always like when they do that in games.
Yeah, it was basically a way of like giving you exposition, but it's in world, so you're not like going into a menu. It's not text. People are talking. You can sort of move around it while you're doing it, and when it finishes, you get a loot drop.
Oh.
So every time you watch a little bit of story, it gives you a loot drop. So it's like, even if you're not really invested in this story, we'd like you to pay attention to it, so we're going to give you a gameplay incentive to watch our story. Which is a great idea. I wish more games did that.
Did you play BioShock? The original BioShock?
I played like the first hour.
I really like how they do their audiophone things.
Can't you listen to them while you're walking around?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like even during fights. And Valley actually took that. You don't find them randomly. They're at set points in the story, but they give you something to listen to while you're going around, and even doing parkour things, you still have something audio to listen to.
So Lichdom Battle Mage is probably one of the prettiest games that came out the year it came out.
Yeah.
And is probably one of the worst games that came out the year it came out.
Oh, yeah.
It's just... It's so weird. Because, like, half of it, you're like, I see where they were going, I see what they were doing, and they have a lot of good ideas, and a lot of them are even implemented. But then it was just like, they completely lost sight of what anybody wanted the game to be.
Yeah.
And it's just so strange. So yeah, that game's shit. Don't buy it. I paid way too much money for it.
We give it the hack and chat seal of disapproval. We'll come up with something better. I'll make a little stamp.
Make a stamp.
Just fuck
this game. That's where my brain went too. Fuck this game. Big stamp says fuck this game, and then another big stamp says this game's cool. I
have another thing I need to stamp with the fuck this game.
Okay.
I played 7 more hours of Ever Oasis.
Why?
Because I hate this game, and I'm so glad because the wool is finally coming off people's eyes, and like the hype is coming down, and everyone's like, "This game is bad."
There's like no content.
And there's stuff to do. It's just not fun.
Yeah.
There's tons of stuff. I will give it that. There's tons of stuff to do. Just way too much stuff that's not fun. After like way too many hours in the game, you get to a point where you can just delegate half of the annoying shit to other people.
That should have happened earlier.
Which, one, just don't make that a thing.
Yeah.
Just don't have something that you feel better delegating out.
Yeah.
Unless your game is based on it. Like RimWorld?
Yeah.
Like, that's a game about delegation.
Especially as you get into the higher difficulties of RimWorld, where you're like, things aren't happening fast enough, and I foresee a time a year down the road where we're not keeping up with our demand to stay alive. And that's frightening, but yeah.
But the game just doesn't get better. So many hours. I've wasted so much of my life on fucking Ever Oasis.
And I've been playing twice, so I've been enjoying my hours.
At least I had Valley. Valley took me out of all the bad.
Yeah.
So I think we're good?
Yeah, that's all I have to talk about.
All right, that's been the Hack and Chat podcast. We'll see you guys again probably Monday next week.
Yeah, whenever we... Probably Monday?
Definitely Monday.
Okay, cool. Monday.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.